Welcome, movie fans, back for another Anatomy of Movie here on Popcorn Talk. We're talking Going in Style with Michael Caine, Alan Arkin, my apologies, and Morgan Freeman. So stay tuned as we dissect Going in Style.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It's a duo today. We have Dimitri Panos.
Hey, Phil, how are ya?
I'm good. And you have me, Phil Svitek.
A man that's all about style, and then a man who has no style.
We're talking the 2017 remake of a 1979 movie. Vastly different, by the way.
Vastly different.
I did not know of the original until afterwards, and I did have a chance to see it, so I'm excited to talk about it. One of the things I'm excited to talk about, apart from the movie itself, is the demographics of the elderly in terms of movie-going habits.
Yes.
Because I saw some interesting articles on that. But before we begin, we should let you guys know, if you're just joining us for the very first time, first off, welcome.
Hey, welcome.
Second off, it is going to be spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen the movie, understand that. We do get a lot of people that just watch us anyway, which is fine, but understand we are going to give away the beginning, the middle, and the end. And that's it. So thank you.
It's actually refreshing, and I have big news to start off too. But yeah, I have noticed that people have watched us or do watch us without having seen the movie before. So it's almost like maybe watching us, they get a sense of the movie, and sometimes they're either encouraged or inspired to go, or just inspired to shut us off. But either way, we are. Also reading the comments, right? And the comments have been really solid, folks, and very appreciated. And it's heartwarming. You take time to watch us. We're a different show. We're not a soundbite show. You tune in. We're about an hour and a half usually on average. Sometimes we go more, maybe sometimes less. But you put in the time to watch us. Very much appreciated. But when you also put in the time to write us, you're taking time to sit and put some thoughts together. It's very much appreciated. And I've noticed, and because of it, I've noticed we're number one in Germany. We're number one in Germany. We're number one in Stockholm, believe it or not. We're number one in the Great White North, Canada A. And we're number one in Minnesota. We have, I think, our number one fan is in Minnesota, who goes by Straight Edge Vegan Abel, I believe. And you're looking at me like, how do you know all this? Like, how?
You just do.
Well, I know it because, look, if you comment on us and you tell us where your province, town, village, city, state is, and you say, hey, I'm from here, guess what? You're going to be number one in our ratings book, and we'll say, hey, we're number one there.
There you go.
The whole thought process is, folks, is that you tell friends, and we'll slowly seep throughout the entire world, and we'll be number one in the world. Because so many people are watching Anatomy of a Movie.
There you go.
So
it's our secret mission to take over the world.
Yep.
Slowly.
One frame at a time.
That's right. That's
there
the
you
slogan. But let's, before we hit old age, let's talk about Going in Style. Overall thoughts, Dimitri?
Well, where do I begin? The original, as you mentioned, 1979 movie, that Going in Style, well, it had George Burns. Had Art Carney. It had Lee Strasberg. Who's Lee Strasberg? Well, I think some of you may have seen Godfather 2. He was Hyman Roth. And that's what he's, I believe, most noted for, on top of a very popular, successful acting school. I believe that's his. I believe. So, that movie had heart, laughs. It had a bittersweet sentiment to it. And it was really about thematically resentment of growing old and what's life have to offer me? Like, what am I doing? It was also directed by Martin Brest, who went on to direct movies you may have heard of, like Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run. And that's 1979 going in style. We'll talk a little bit more about it. So, what is this remake directed by Zach Braff for me? What does it have going for it? Oh, for me, good use of split screen. I don't know what to tell you. For me, this movie was trite. I found it to be very contrived. I find it to be pandering towards its audience, almost insulting. I found it to be so sickly sweet that it would make cotton candy gag. And yet you had Michael Caine, Alan Arkin, Morgan Freeman, people who have longevity in this business.
Oscar winners, and decent chemistry together, but I felt that they were so wasted, and they did their best to keep this movie from falling apart. But in the end, it was the screenplay to me that shocked the hell out of me, because it was written by Theodore Melfi. You remember him? I talked great praise about this guy because he did Hidden Figures. My favorite movie of 2016. And this movie, I don't know, it unabashedly panders to its audience, and it handles something with a little more, I wish it just handled it and given the audience a little bit more credit to handle something like the 1979 going in style, put a little more meat in its bones. Braff's directions, to me, it was fine, kept the movie going. I think this is his biggest budgeted feature. And he was fine, but I just honestly felt he was handcuffed, along with the cast, to an empty calorie screenplay. And in the end, once I awoke from sugar shock, I found myself being the sugar
angry.
or the cocaine and the cotton candy?
The cocaine and the cotton candy. Yeah. It was the cocaine and the cotton candy. And then, I don't know, Joey King, who I adore as well. Performances were fine. And Margaret, it's lovely to see her again, but she went from being in grumpy old men to curmudgeonly old men. I don't know. I just didn't. It tried to just be so positive on all fronts that for me it failed.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have quite the same sentiment as you. I actually did enjoy it.
So this should be fun.
Maybe, I saw it Friday night, the day it came out. I was in the mood to see a comedy. It's been a while since I got to see a comedy. And so, I was just in the mood, and for whatever reason, the audience that I was with, they were laughing. So then I laughed, and then that made me want to laugh more, and then in turn they laughed. So it kind of became infectious. And I liked it. I thought it was not necessarily a screwball comedy, but something along those lines.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, though. A comedy, like, there aren't... You remember when, like, there used to be a plethora of comedies, and most of them were funny? Like, the last comedy we really talked about was Fist Fight.
But even that, I enjoyed that heavily, but I saw it with 3 people, and I was laughing.
Yes.
But it was very hard to shoulder that burden.
And maybe, I saw it with number one, I can honestly say I was the youngest in the audience, and that's saying something. And the audience I saw it with, they were hooting and hollering too. And I was just going, what the hell are you laughing at? This is making you look stupid. But you're right. Comedies and horror movies, like, those are movies that with a great crowd, it's so infectious. Like, even sometimes if a joke doesn't work, if everybody else around you is laughing, it'll make you laugh.
Yeah.
So I get 100% what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I was fooled into this. So I'm going to give the acting much more praise than perhaps you will. It felt like they were enjoying themselves as these characters. And obviously they're phenomenal actors, so whether or not they actually were, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it seemed like that to me, and so I was also infected by that of what was on screen with them. And they pulled the moments. Again, if they're, I haven't had really, believe it or not, too much time to think back on, okay, how was the script actually? And I was just fooled by their performances of really those tender moments, however contrived they were, that I just went along with it.
Yeah.
And so I did enjoy it. I think it's vastly different of the 1979 movie thematically, among other things. And the one thing I'll cop to is I think it's too easy a thing to, part of the development of it was, okay, well, how do we do it? The whole idea of banks and getting even is such a sort of cliche notion at this point that that wasn't easy and was an easy selling point enough for everybody there. I don't necessarily share 100% the same sentiment, only because then, I don't know. It just, for me, it takes away any responsibility that people have towards themselves.
Sure.
I'm not saying that the banks or anything else is off the hook, but, at the same time, I just hate getting petty and caught up in that. But as politics aside, I thought the movie worked overall.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you bring up a really good point too. So regarding like the plot devices, let's blame the banks. This is why we're going to rob the bank. And pardon me, I just kept on thinking of a much better movie, Hell or High Water, which not a comedy, but the plot line was sort of similar. Like they're robbing banks to get money to pay a bank because they're going to lose their mortgage, which is sort of similar here. And the banks are the bad guys, corporations are the bad guys. Okay, you want to bring it into modern times, modern day. I almost get it, with the exception of, number one, I mentioned Grumpy Old Men. Grumpy Old Men always respected its characters. It's a better movie, and it's a little more heartfelt, also starring Anne Margaret. But it treated these old grumpy old men, the script was just better. It treated them with smarts. This movie didn't, the original 1979, it wasn't about robbing a bank. It's like, all we do now is we're retired and we live off our means and we feed birds in the park. It's like, we need something exciting in our lives. Let's rob a bank. And hijinks ensue. I mean, it was a comedy. It is a comedy.
I mean, they wore the Marx Brothers costumes, so yeah.
Which is great. And this just was, for me, it just ended up being devoid of that. And I like these actors. I respect the actors. And they were fine. And they're always good at whatever, even in a movie like this. Like, you can look at Michael Caine and go, he's giving a performance. He didn't just show up. I can't say that they telephoned or they did it just for the paycheck. I think they were behind their director and behind the material. They believed in it. I thought some of the best scenes were between Alan Arkin and Anne Margaret. Those are the ones that probably made me laugh the most. And also Michael Caine with his little granddaughter, Joey King, was good. But when I talk about contrivance, I'm like, oy, ay, ay, ay. There's the scene where, after the bank robbery, and they bring all these old codgers into a gymnasium on wheelchairs for like a suspect lineup, and they bring in Morgan Freeman's character here, and like this guy, just the scene before, was in a hospital for renal failure, and I'm like, really? Like, he was having renal failure, but you're gonna take him out of you couldn't have the star witnesses, this little girl. And I was like, oh, good God. Like, it was like the dumbest plot device, in this movie, one of them. And it's sort of like, that stuff sort of lost me. It didn't respect the characters. It didn't respect like growing old and I get the sense of losing a house and such, but it also made them just look, it's sometimes inept. And I didn't want them to be inept. I wanted, especially some of the supporting characters, they should have just been portrayed a little smarter. The original Going in style, these guys were a little smarter, but although there was the slapstick with them putting bullets into the gun, that was sort of funny, but I don't know. I was like, there was no way I was going to figure these guys could pull off like robbing a bank.
Yeah. I think it's comedy in general. I think it's going towards a lower common denominator just because it feels like it has to. I'm not saying that is the only solution. We've seen many cases otherwise. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what you get. And, to that same token, Theodore Melfi, while great, I mean, I don't know, maybe does it take an older person, whether male or female, to actually write something for this sort of demo?
Well,
To be presented, you know, properly.
The answer to that, I think, is twofold. A, the argument can be he succeeded because box office-wise, it did better than expected. Okay. So, on the other hand, you can argue no, but they did purposely want to make a different movie than the 1979 version. And Melfi even says it himself. Like, we took it as an inspiration, but they didn't want to include the bittersweetness of it all. They didn't want to include, like, characters dying. I mean, because we have in the original, there are two main deaths, and they get caught, or one gets caught. But that's a great line at the end.
You're talking about they can't keep me.
They can't keep me. It's George Burns delivering it, and he just has this evil, like this grin. He's like, don't worry about it, kid. You think this place can keep me? It's a great ending line. But this movie, they just completely stayed away from anybody dying, anybody having any type of conflict, anything going on, and everything just ends up, roses for them. But that was done on purpose. Yeah. Like, and to me, that's like, just give a little more credit to the audience. But with that said, that's me. The audience I saw it with was eating it up. Your audience was eating it up. So the audience reception was
well, I don't know if that's, I wouldn't necessarily cite those things as the problem, like if that's what you set out to do, I don't think that's necessarily the problem that you're citing overall. Mm-hmm. I think, you can still work with those bullet points and structure in such a way that appeals to the problems that you have. In that way. And yeah, I mean, I have read enough articles at this point talking about how we look at, and I might as well have this conversation now, how the elderly are portrayed in movies, and yet they represent 20% of the box office. Mm-hmm. And to your point, like that they're eating it up, but so I would love to see like a full comparison of what the elderly actually think of it. But a lot of critics are saying like that the elderly are just being portrayed as buffoons. Yeah,
I mean, an actor whom near and dear to my heart because he's the great Doc Brown. He was also in Maria and Kevin's movie, Serial Buddies. Christopher Lloyd is also in Star Trek 3 as a Klingon, Krug. So near and dear to my heart. But in this movie, I was like, what's this guy doing out of the home? Like literally. He was so moronic, and it's like, how can he be out on no supervision whatsoever? And again, to me, it was like sort of insulting. It's like, wow, is this how they're portraying older people to be this way? And that's why, of recent times, grumpy old men they were never treated that way. Of course, you have Lemon and Mathau in that. You have a great cast here.
Not that it hit the message 100% clearly, but I think there's evidence of, I mean, in terms of him, maybe he realistically needed to be in a home, like he needed some sort of care, but perhaps a little bit of the message, again, not that it's clear, is that we just don't take care of our elderly that actually do need help.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
It's an argument, but I'm not saying it's evident in the movie.
No, that valid point, and... Again, for a director, for Zach Braff, he didn't need a Kickstarter campaign for this movie or anything. He was offered it. And again, I can see from his standpoint why he would take this. He said it was Theodore Melfi's script. But then, when you get people coming on board, like Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, Alan Arkin, to me, and even he says, he goes, getting this cast, he goes, the cast, he said, it made it easy for me to pick this. And he goes on, like, where he was so enamored of this cast. It was hard for him not to act like a deer in the headlights. And these actors are seasoned. They don't want a buffoon. They're not going to be in a picture. Or they'll make it very difficult for a person if they feel as an idiot who's directing this, and Zach Braff had to be a good leader. And each of them say that he did a really fine job, and that helped Zach Braff, in directing this movie. And again, I can't pick in anything about his direction. He made the movie move along pretty well, but he gets a little bit more of a budget. I think this was a $25 million budget. He was working with $3 to $5 million budget, so he's getting 20 plus more, to work with. But to his credit, he says, "Yeah, my directing style didn't change, and his past movies, and we've done them here, they are character-driven movies. He will stay on conversation, which is refreshing in this day and age. So he didn't change his style outside of his use of split screen. Geez, I haven't seen that much split screen since the Boston Strangler. But it was, at least they kept the movie going. So, and obviously he was good with the young and the old. He gets a really good performance out of Jamie King, right? And fantastic. Michael Allen and Morgan, he delivers, and he gets them to do things like getting Morgan Freeman in a lark cart. And they actually did that. So yeah, he got the best of his performances given the material that he had to work with.
Yeah. It actually is a very diverse cast, even just having Matt Dillon, even Kenan Thompson. I thought he was also fantastic.
He was good. I like Kenan Thompson. Yeah.
And I give him credit. I give him credit for figuring that one out with Alan Arkin.
Yeah. And again, that was really wow. That's that. Okay, but yeah. Yeah.
You know what? Just story wise, the thing that I'll cop to was a little bit over the top was the character of Jesus being the catalyst to get it all going and then being the same guy.
Right.
That was.
Yeah. That
it just was the
cherry
tied
on top.
It too much.
Yeah.
For me.
That was the cherry on top. But I like that actor.
John Ortiz.
John Ortiz. Yeah. No, I like watching him. And I like watching. It was even good to see Anne Margaret again. And it's funny. For her, she was asked how it was for her to walk onto the set and be part of the production, and she said, one of her first days when she went into hair and makeup and clothing, he said Zach had 50s and 60s songs blaring, and she said, "I can't tell you how much it just got me in the mood." Yeah. She goes, we were dancing. And everybody, it helped with the chemistry with these people, which I thought was fantastic. And with our three actors, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine have worked together before. They hadn't worked with Alan Arkin. And Alan Arkin...
Well, I think Morgan Freeman and Alan did.
Did they? I'm not...
They worked on one
Maybe
movie.
It was Michael Caine and Alan Arkin.
Yeah, those two.
And worked. But each of these people are accomplished people. They've been in comedies. They've been in dramas. They've been in action movies. And they've done it all. Alan Arkin is a favorite of mine. One of the funniest movies, The In-Laws, the original In-Laws, not the remake, but the original In-Laws is an historical movie. He's also in a lesser-known movie called Freebie and the Bean, which I really enjoy. Also, many people who may not know, he took a turn as Chief Inspector Clouseau. He played what Peter Sellers made famous, and he did one movie as Inspector Clouseau, and he was actually very funny. And of course, Little Miss Sunshine you can't take away from. So all of these people have won Academy Awards for good reason. They're talented actors who can pull off and maybe even raise the bar for what might not be so great. And that's, to point at something, that's something that I could just enjoy seeing them perform in the mere fact. But with their age, though, it made it was different when we always talk about people on set. And so Anne Margaret saying Zach Braff was keeping everybody lively. Alan Arkin was asked a question about, hey, did you guys get along together on set? And his answer was, no, we had our 12-hour days in between. We just go to our trailer. We're old. We went to our trailers and rested, and then got up to go to our next scene. And it's like, oh, to me that was just so sad. He goes, we actually got to know each other more on the press junket.
Yeah.
That's when we hung out together. During the movie, it was like, no, as soon as he said cut, I go to the trailer. I'm old. I gotta go to sleep. And I was like, oh, that's sort of sad. But
yes and no. I mean, not that this is whatever you think about the movie, but like the fact that you're creating an art form, at the end of the day, like put your energy towards that, know. And then,
now, see, in this interview, had you worked with Morgan or Michael before this, or was it the first time? And he says, no, I never worked with either of them. He said so. Unless he's
IMDb trivia, then is off. Maybe
that's what he says. But this was an interview that
to be fair, I forget because this was through the IMDb trivia, so they could have been a movie together but not had scenes together. That's so true. That it doesn't necessarily mean that.
That's true.
Yeah.
So true. So. And we could talk about like a couple of. We should talk about a couple of scenes within the movie, but it's interesting because this movie has at least a 5-year maturation, so to speak, because it was in October of 2012. October of 2012, that New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers said they were going to develop a remake of the heist comedy Going in Style. They already had Theodore Melfi set to write the script. Tony Bill, who was a producer in the original, came on board as a producer here. And then going to 2013, a gentleman by the name of Don Scardino was hired to direct the film. And September 19th of that same year, 2013, Melfi, who wrote the script, was in talks to direct the film. So it was going all over the place, but it was pretty much, they had a year to try to figure out who was directing. It wasn't until November of 2014 that Braff was in talks and then got the movie. And it was announced actually too that Morgan Freeman and Michael Caine were cast. And apparently Dustin Hoffman was in talks.
He was in talks, yeah.
That would have been interesting.
It could have been.
I mean, he's different from Alan Arkin, Academy Award winner. It would have been interesting to see him in the role. It would have been interesting to see his take.
It would have certainly been. In some ways, and in the spirit of which is intended, it would have been interesting to have Al Pacino simply because they had Dog Day Afternoon as part of their homework, if you will. Yeah. Which I found humorous.
That was the most cleverest thing in this movie, is that somebody was watching Dog Day Afternoon, which is about robbing a bank. That was to get a sex change operation, but they had the famous Attica scene. So I was like, Dog Day Afternoon. Like, I'm sitting in the audience going, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. I'm laughing. I was the only one laughing at it.
I laughed because I knew. I was like, they're watching Dog Day.
Funny.
Yeah, I've seen that movie.
And I'll say, too, it was good to see Matt Dillon again. So it had cast. And then the principal photography of this movie, here's the thing. It was in New York City. They used a lot in New York City, which is great. And August 3rd, 2015. So that's over 2 years ago. And what was unbeknownst to me about the movie is that, and I found out about the research, I did not know this movie sat on a shelf for a year, almost a year. It was to have come out in 2016. But it was going to go up against Captain America: Civil War, and they figured, probably not the best. But to hold it for a year is like crazy. In the end, somebody can pat themselves on the back and say, "Hey, look what we did, box office wise." That's not too shabby. It was a good thing that we held it a year. But I would also understand it must have been a really big undertaking just to try to get these people back together and to organize any kind of a press junket, where they are, and I'm not saying this in a demeaning way, where they actually are going to, like, since 2014 or 2015 when they started filming, they've been busy people. And, like, to remember specific details about... I don't remember what I had for dinner last night.
Well,
so to be talking about something that happened 2 years ago...
I mean, to be fair, a lot of movies sometimes have that time frame, but at the same time, it's built into, okay, you know, your press date is going to be around here, so, okay, yeah, you can kind of be around that, versus like, oh, well, okay, that didn't happen, move it back a year. Oh, wait, now I really have to think because... You know, at least I had it then in my mind to be talking about that. Now I just kind of put it on the shelf.
Right. Yeah.
So I get what you're saying there.
Yeah. So it must have been hard to do. And, you know, just getting these talent to talk about something that they had done, which could have seemed eons ago. And again, I'm not being demeaning. I'm just saying, in a blink of an eye, so much time can go by. And this wasn't like it's not like filming a Dark Knight movie, you know? So... but I'm sure they're all happy to get back together again, you know. And listen, Zach Braff, happy to be directing, and I just think that it was him talking about the chemistry of Anne Margaret and Alan Arkin was interesting because he. You know, Anne Margaret came out and said, you know, Alan's weird. She's like, he talks weird, walks weird, acts weird, and he looks weird, she says jokingly. You know, and I said that to his wife, and his wife is like, yeah, he's uniquely weird. And Zach Braff, though, put the two of them together, and then I think casting-wise, their chemistry worked. I thought that they were I liked the scenes in the grocery store with the two of them. And he was the very curmudgeonly, you know, he was just waiting to die, more or less. But I thought that their chemistry was probably the best. And Zach Braff going on, just talking about the challenges of working in New York City. He said actually the supermarket sequence was actually more challenging than the bank robbery sequence to shoot. And I thought that was interesting because he said because they had to put Morgan Freeman in a basket and have Michael Caine drive an electric cart with that basket attached, and they had to do it around Williamsburg, Brooklyn, of all places, in the middle of summer. And Michael and Morgan did almost all of it, even through traffic on an extremely hot day. And Morgan, who is 6'2" tall, right? They had to make a special carton basket, and they made it so comfortable for him that in between takes, he just didn't even bother getting out.
That's funny.
So I think that's funny. 6'2". He's a big guy.
Big guy. Very sweet guy, though.
Yeah.
Very sweet guy.
Yeah.
Not a surprise. I mean, it's no surprise any of them have lasted this long. You know what I mean? Like, it takes, obviously, a special something to be able to have that longevity.
Well, absolutely. And I remember Morgan Freeman from the Electric Company days, you know? Michael Caine has been around for, whether it's a Woody Allen film, whether it's Jaws the Revenge, or, you know, the Dark Knight movies now, but I believe he was the original Get Carter. Mm-hmm. You know, he has done it all. And same with Alan Arkin. I mean, you have legendary status. These are people who have been around, and when you talk about longevity, the mere fact that people can give them roles. Morgan Freeman's the voice of God. I mean, he has such timbre in his voice. You know, he's made a career of voice talent as well. So that's what's amazing. I just wish they had better material to work from.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, in terms of one of the things you cited was that everything was wrapped up in a bow or in whatever way. One of the things that I did appreciate, again, it might have pushed it a little bit too far, but it gave clear-cut reasons as to the things that we mentioned, whether it was the kidneys, whether it was the apartment going away, or in terms of Albert, you know, it was just the simple fact that he had nobody, and he was going to outlive all of them because that's his luck. So it made their reasons very clear-cut, versus in the original, again, it's just that kind of philosophical, what do we do with our time?
Yeah.
More so.
We're sitting here being berated by kids feeding pigeons.
Yeah.
Let's do something. Let's go. The movie's called Going in Style.
Yeah.
Let's go in style.
Yeah.
So
So
they sort of kind of do.
they do. And in this
it's
one,
funny.
and I don't know. I'm just basically the question is, do you feel like, and the answer for me is yes, that audiences today sort of need like a very specific reason to all those things.
I feel that the original had set up a really good reason that was genuine, and I think thematically, I think it could still work today. Even with that said, I do believe that, I get what they were saying. We need to make it modern, but I only throw that question back. It's like, do you? Like, why is that theme of getting old? Why does that need to be modernized? I mean, it's a constant thread. It's a constant theme that we all have to face in one way, shape, or form. I just wish that the movie did a little better. And giving so the kidney thing, it's sort of that too was sort of kind of amazing that these are his two best buddies, and they had no idea that he was going in for dialysis. They had no idea that any of this was going on. I was a little bit surprised. Like that sort of kind of didn't fly with me. And again, it was treated like in one scene, well, he's got renal failure, but the next scene he gets out of a hospital. I'm like, wait, he's in a serious state here. And then Alan Arkin's character gives him his kidney. And what's the line? Alan
Why do I
Arkin
need
says,
to?
well, but no, he also said something like, I forget which character it was. Oh, I'm going to live another 20 years. 20, nah, 10. He goes, okay, 10 years. Something, I forget, at the wedding. So we've got a wedding in this movie. So.
Which seemed like a eulogy.
Yeah,
they
the
played
trick.
that ploy. Yep. Which I didn't necessarily mind, but I was like, okay.
It was a nice bait and switch, and I actually was going, oh, okay, so that at least one person is, and it would have been interesting had it been the Alan Arkin character, that would have been interesting to me. That, but no, we pulled back and it was actually a wedding.
Yeah.
So I mean, to tie it up even more neatly and gift wrapped it for you, you get a wedding.
Yeah, that again, I didn't necessarily need that happy of an ending, but I do. The original Going in Style handled the deaths in such a tasteful and meaningful way, and especially the way this story was going, I was very curious. Are they, because if they got caught, I wouldn't have loved it, and at the same time, if one of them did die, just the tone, the way it was set up within the first 30 minutes, I would have felt dissatisfied. Mm-hmm. So even though don't necessarily love that it was so neatly wrapped up, I'm glad it didn't go that route because I would have felt cheated.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think that's what Melfi and production felt. And I just don't know. I mean, I think you just give the audience a little more credit because the original's not a depressing movie. I don't think it's it's not a depressing movie. You don't leave it going, oh, I'm bummed. It's like, yeah, they handled the death with sentiment, and it had heft to it. It had heft. And the comedy also helps, and it elevates the characters. So there's more stake to say. So when a character dies, you feel more for that character because you've just been on this journey in which they did something so off the wall for people of that age. And this movie just so blatantly shied away, stayed clear. We don't want we want to make this we want you old people to watch this movie and think everything's hunky-dory and this is how it's going to be. And fine, the audience I saw it with, they loved seeing Willie, Joe, and Albert together. So and some of the banter was fun. I just, like I said, I just wish there was a little bit more meat in its bones for me to.
Well, let's dissect the bank robbery scene itself.
Okay.
Because I thought obviously a very big piece of the movie.
Yeah.
And so much happens in that you have to buy in for later on because obviously Matt Dillon's character is uses that to be able to search for people. Which, by the way, I did love the bank teller, whatever his name is, just coming out a hero.
Yeah, that guy was annoyingly funny. But again, he was like the character. I'm trying to find who that actor was. He was so, like, I don't know. He was so. When Michael Caine is talking to him about his mortgage, you know, he was so buffoonishly inconsiderate. Like, not professionally, but literally buffoonishly inconsiderate towards Michael Caine. Like, that. Oh, he was. I think it's Josh Page who played Chuck Lofton. I believe that's the character. And like, you just couldn't. It automatically sets him up as a quote unquote antagonist villain. And not just because he worked for the bank, not because he was taking, you know, it was bad enough that he was taking away this guy's house, but he had to be so. Look, I told you about it. Oh, see, told you. And he goes, no, you didn't make me aware. Nope, right here, aware. Made you aware. And it just bothered me. But he was the guy that you know, he's supposed to be the comic relief throughout the whole bank robbery. But again, to me, all I could think of, tell me if you were similar, during the bank robbery, I was thinking about Heat. You know, people jumping up on that middle table. I mean, Zach Braff filmed that grandly. He used his space for our three guys to come on in. Now, naturally, there wasn't the gunplay and the street shootout, but something just reminded me a little bit of Heat.
Yeah, it was very well shot. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
I felt it had a good pacing. Obviously, they have 2 minutes or so within there, so it felt I did a good job with sort of real time and not letting it drag and so forth. So I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
You know, not obviously, it was great to see. I did enjoy it, the fact that the first one was in the same bank, because then you're able to directly compare the two, which was a clever device, at least in that sense, to see, okay, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? Because this is how the first one went. Oh boy, and then the second one's going like this.
Yeah.
But in terms of that guy, though, I mean, again, this is just me.
Chuck Lofton.
In terms of Chuck.
The bank
this is me perhaps projecting, but it's like, you know, I think this guy hates himself for the job he does. And so at this point, he's just got to justify everything. And so the less personal he is, the better he can sleep at night.
Yeah.
Again, that's just my justification of it. Take it or leave it. But
let me ask you something. So earlier we had, let's try, before we do a bank, let's try robbing the grocery store. Number one, why you try robbing the grocery store that you go to, where you're, you know, seen on a regular basis. Okay, I'll throw that aside. After how that went down, did you at all believe at all that they could have pulled off a bank job? Like, that was my other thing. Like, if they were at least were able to pull that scene off. And again, I wasn't looking for Ocean's 11 here. Okay? But I could have. They went so for the lowest common denominator of comedy that, well, what if they did pull it off? Like, wouldn't that make it so that when they're deciding, or they're going through the steps and plotting out the bank robbery, that it would be a little bit more believable? But they were so like, it's like, hey, it was like they were worse than the Three Stooges. And again, their characters shouldn't have been so dumb. Yeah. Like, it was as if they didn't know. Well, I know that they didn't know how to rob anything, but if they just treated them, they had a little more confidence. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But after that first scene, it was funny, but I was like, these guys can't pull off a bank robbery. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can safely say that the movie made a conscious decision for that. Not even as justified by that scene, but even the montage, the Rocky montage training session, if you will. At no point were they competent in any of the things that they did.
No.
You know, you have to be in peak physical condition. They're basically just walking. right? So, so they made a conscious decision to say, okay, yeah, we want you wondering how the hell are they going to pull this off. Seems you disagree with it. I don't know. I could flip one way or the other.
Sure.
Again, upon second viewing, maybe I'm not holding this movie up to be the greatest movie.
Sure.
I'm just saying, in the moment, I did enjoy it, and I went with it, and so it
listen,
worked.
That's and this is why I love the healthy dialogue. It's good, because there were many people who I'm sure really liked the movie too. Again, when we're talking about characters, believe it or not, one of the characters that I sort of kind of liked, but again, he had his neat tie into, was Murphy, who's Joey King's actual father, played by Peter Serafinowicz. He has good dialogue with Michael Caine. You know, he's like the quote-unquote deadbeat dad who learns to
Make breakfast.
He learns to make breakfast. But again, that scene to me, again, coming from a divorced background, okay, and this one didn't seem like this guy seemed to be a real deadbeat. I'm like going, oh, the mom's just gonna let him in the house, and she's okay with it, and he's gonna cook. I was like, what the hell is going? I thought he was Michael Caine hated him. They haven't seen this guy in forever, and he's got like a pot dispensary, in like a meat packing district or wherever it was. You know, I mean, I like the guy, and at least from an acting standpoint, I got his transition and his arc of saying, you know, Michael Caine's treating me that, I do have to be a better dad, you know, and I'm getting this from Joe. And you know what, Joe's right, and I'm going to be at the soccer game. And so I get all that. But again, it just goes back to everything tied up. I'm not even sure we needed a stepfather in this movie, but, you know, there he was. But he was good. He was fine. I liked him. What were your thoughts in the bank robbery? I had a feeling things were going to go south, not because they weren't going to pull it off, but because of Willie, Morgan Freeman. Mm-hmm. And he had an episode. But it all began with he saw the little girl with the dolly that reminded him of his
granddaughter.
And this comes into play later on. That's the famous usual suspects wheelchair lineup. What did you think about that?
The lineup?
No, not the lineup. The
interaction.
That plot device, which sort of held up the robbery a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I could have done a little bit without it. I think we could have learned something differently, only because the tension was there of like, okay, what is she gonna choose? It's almost too obvious,
right?
And we knew, like, as it's going on right in the bank itself, his watch is so visible, and it's just screaming. I mean, it's the world's most obvious watch.
Yeah.
And
with a face of his granddaughter on it that was given to him as a gift.
Yeah. So, but it is somewhat of a sweet sentiment when she finally decides not to do it because, by having that watch, she knows it's him, but it's that endearing thing of like, I want you to go see your granddaughter.
Right.
I don't know. I don't fall one way or the other. Could I have done without it? Perhaps, but it didn't necessarily bother me either. The second half of the movie was very much like, how the hell are they gonna get out of this?
Yeah, how are we gonna wrap this up?
Throwing everything in there, even down to like the Matt Dillon thing. I thought that was a little bit too far.
Which one? When he shows up at the diner?
Yeah, at the diner, because I was just like, okay, now what? Like, when are we home free?
Right.
We're throwing everything in that we can.
Yeah. Agreed. No, I agree. So the other question too, because we talked about Zach Braff's directing. What did you think about how he handled his directing in this movie? I mean, he's filming in whether it's Brooklyn or New York City. What did you find of? What did you feel of his directing?
I thought I would love to see him do a caper movie, simply because I thought he did a good job with that overall. I thought he had fun technique, as you said, with the 3-screen. I thought sort of the explanation of the Ocean's 11 type of heist. Then we're going back, and he's and we see the video cameras. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that's what it's perceived as, but here's the reality. So I did enjoy that side of it. And yeah, I mean, part of what made it work was because there's just certain comedies that can go on. Honestly, if a comedy's over an hour and 40, I promise you, I will, unless it's something really amazing, I will probably dislike it. Even if it's not the world's best comedy, if it comes in at 90 minutes, it's sometimes hard for me to be like, okay, well, that's just a bad movie. I'm like, you know what? It was concise.
Yeah, it was in and out. Sure.
It had jokes within it, and so I laughed at the jokes. And you know what? Great.
Yeah.
Good use of my 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I can't complain about Zach Braff's. That's one thing. I can't complain about his direction. Even his little misdirect at the end where we're thinking that we're at a eulogy and then you pull back and it's sort of a wedding. And then I was like, oh, of course. Everybody lives happily ever after. But at least for 2 seconds, I thought, well, there's an interesting twist. He gives his kidney and he dies during the procedure when we think it's going to be the other way around. But no. So apparently, too, Zach put his dad in the movie. Did you? I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
He put his dad. He gave him a small part in the film. Why did he put his dad in the movie? Well, according to Zach Braff, it's because he had a huge crush on Anne Margaret. And he said when I would mention other movie stars that we were considering for going in style, he would say, oh, okay, that's interesting. He goes, but when I mentioned the possibility of casting Anne Margaret, he said, now that's a different story. So he put him in the movie. So, Dad could meet Anne Margaret, who was very hotsy-totsy at the time, too. Like, Anne Margaret. Again, we're talking seasoned actors all around. So,
that's a good son.
Yeah. It's a good son. Hey, Dad. Want to be in a movie?
Yeah. Anything story or scene-wise you want to dissect before we move on to the production side of things? Although we've even been jumping around within that realm as well. But.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about shooting in New York City can be a daunting task. Okay, especially for a big budgeted movie, and this is his biggest budgeted. So. Zach was saying that they utilized pretty much all over this. They utilized the whole city, and it looked it too. It didn't look. There was nothing that looked fake about it.
It was shot well. It looked well.
Yeah, and when you have recognizable people like Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Alan Arkin, he said that was one of the bigger challenges about filming in and around that city was crowd forming because people could recognize them. And I think that these guys, they're talented enough. They know, and they believed in Zach and doing and doing the best job possible. It was definitely it was that collaborative effort we always talk about making a movie, whether it's a big budget or not. And, I think they got their $25 million worth. I can't think of any scene. I mean, we talked about how the John Ortiz character, how, he ends up being the guy that robs the bank while Michael Caine is there. And he says, we have to take care of our own. It's society's responsibility
to take care of the elderly.
Take care of the elderly. And then when we hear that at the end, it's like, wow, that is one heck of a coincidence that it was the deadbeat dad who put him in touch with him, who helped him do their job. But, yeah, I liked him, How about you?
Makes you believe in fate, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, what did you think about, again, it wasn't just enough to orchestrate the bank robbery here, because we had to organize...
Yeah, the bank robbery was the least of it.
yeah, I mean, there's the whole preamble to the bank robbery. It's like, we got to go to the fair. We have to make our alibis tight, make sure everybody sees us. You know, then we go off to the porta potty or to the ride. So there was that whole montage sequence too. And then when we see sort of kind of the stuff that we didn't originally see, like how did they get out of the bank and how do they get back to because I didn't know they got back to the fair. So that whole sequence between its editing and the way that it directed was paced pretty well. I liked that. You know, it was done well.
Yeah, I told you the information in a concise, clear, fast.
What you needed to know.
At the point at which you needed to know.
Yeah, and it held back what you needed to know
you needed to know.
So you needed to know. So
when do I need to know? You'll know.
Yeah, you'll know. So yeah, no, I found that was very interesting too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I definitely really good technique overall. So that's why I do think I'm excited. Like, if I like heist movies, I would like to see more heist movies, and whether or not it's a comedy, you know, I'd give Zach a shot at it.
No, but you're absolutely right. He had a technique down, and he was, you know, and you're right. As a caper movie, again, I just wish the story were better, but he handled himself really well. And I think he's growing. He's becoming a little bit more confident about his ability as a director. And you can tell he has a passion for it. And he has a passion for his actors. I think he greatly cares for the people that he has on board. He likes Joey King. He said that. He said that Joey King is his muse. He enjoys working with her, and she adores working with him. It's like her second dad. And I'd like to see her in more movies as well. I think she's a young actress that deserves a shot at blossoming more and being given more attention and perhaps being given some more roles. I think she's really
got
good.
2 more movies as of right now slated in 2017 coming out. She could have more, but those are the ones announced, if you will.
Yeah. So they like working together, obviously. It would be interesting. Warner Brothers New Line can't, like, they have to be happy with what a movie that's been sitting on a shelf for about a year. They have to be happy about its dividends thus far.
I mean, in that regard, right? So it went up against Smurfs and The Case of Christ, which I haven't seen The Case of Christ, nor have I seen the Smurfs, but at least I've heard of the Smurfs. Projected to make around $8 million, but it finished 4th at the box office with almost $12 million in the opening weekend. So, you know, above expectation.
Now here's, I'll give you a little Hollywood insight, a little background insight. If you were reading the trades at all, if you're into that, or reading any of the movie news into that weekend, if you were going into Sunday, going in style on its estimated gross, a headline was reading, beat out the Smurfs. Beat it out. That's the estimated gross. Then when the real-time gross came in, it fell to 4th behind the Smurfs, which is interesting because that is jockeying for position. That's jockeying because here's the deal, folks. If you really want to know the lowdown about box office grosses and you want to know the real story, you have to hunt for it because you'll hear about it Monday morning, but you'll hear about the estimated grosses on Sunday. It won't be until after sometime well in the afternoon on Monday in which the real grosses will come out. And there could be changes. I mean, in today's day and age with the technology they have for grabbing this information, it's become a ton better. But still on Sunday, you have to, the people who do this, and I've done this, you have to predict. You have to sort of kind of forecast what you think your picture is going to do on a Sunday. You have to factor in that drop. You have to factor in the time of year that it's in. Is there holidays going on? There's a lot to factor in, and you got to figure it out. But the other thing that happens too is sometimes a studio will say, boy, if we're going to be close, if we think we're going to be close to, if movie B says, you know, we're going to be close to movie A, And I want to beat that studio. So whatever you do, try to factor in, but try to make it so that it's not so obvious. But and then it becomes a game of chicken. Because then you sit around, because here's how it works. So on Sunday morning, all the studios have people who are putting grosses together, okay? So they each come up with their numbers, and it goes through a committee. You're talking about the heads of distribution. It's like, okay. Well, has anybody announced yet? Well, nobody's announced yet. Well, let's wait let's wait for Paramount to announce. Okay, so then Paramount announces. Okay, is anybody else in there? We don't want to announce just yet. We want to hold off. So then it becomes a waiting game as to studios announcing. And then if a studio announces that they might think that they can edge out for that Sunday, they'll go, okay, make the number a little bit, because we don't want to be number 4. It looks better for our bottom line if we say that we're number 3. And we're not going to beat them out by like 20 million. Beat them out by hundreds of thousands. Yeah, it could. It's like The Price is Right.
Yeah.
You're right. It becomes that. You don't make it egregious. And then you come out on Sunday. And then what happens is on Sunday and Monday morning, the estimates come out. And all in the headlines, it will say, Going in Style beat the Smurfs. That's what people pay attention to. Later on in Monday, and then in Tuesday morning, when you find out the actual Monday gross, that's not what really happened. And Going in Style is number 4 and the Smurfs are number 3, but it's not made headlines. Nobody says, oops, we overestimated. Like, so in the people's minds and the consciousness, you're like, even if you mildly pay attention to it, you'll say, oh yeah, Going in Style beat the Smurfs. When the actuality of it is, it didn't. So like you said, it does $11 million thus far, though. Here's the thing. Thus far, that movie has made $17 million as of April 13th. $17 million. Not too shabby. I didn't realize it was open in foreign territories, which accounted for 22% of the gross. So all in worldwide, Going in Style has made $21 million. I can tell you, and you really heard these words from above, I was surprised going into this. They weren't marketing that movie to me. I'll tell you that much. So, $21 million worldwide. That's not bad. I mean, they're going to make their money back. They have to be happy for a movie that they had collecting dust. Yeah. I mean, that's like found money under the couch, like under the seat cushion. That's what this movie is right now for them. And they're like, hey, Zach, good job. And this could get Zach his next studio directing gig. And maybe he doesn't have to go to Kickstarter again.
Yeah. If nothing else, I'm excited for that opportunity. I think he deserves it. He's a good director. He's a great actor. So I'd love to see him do more.
I've seen him in interviews too, and he's very enthusiastic. Yeah. I like watching him. I like hearing him talk about stuff because he does know the craft, and he stands behind it, and he likes it. I would love to talk with him about that. Zach, come on in. Come in, Mr. Braff. We'll be nice. We'll be gentle. It'll be fun.
It will be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, audiences overall, I mean, they gave it a B+, so it seemed like for the most part, I mean, that's not an A, obviously, but it's not, it's encouraging enough for the people that did watch it. Mm-hmm. I would give it a B+ myself.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe give it a B- C+, but
D.
Okay.
And that's not for a Dimitri. That's just, it made me angry at the end of the day. I wish I had hoped, because I do like the original.
Old man.
I know that's it though. That's it. I walked out of the theater going, am I a grumpy old man for hating this movie? Am I that curmudgeon? Because, and then I said, fuck that. I go, no, I'm just a person who has taste. Like, who likes movies. This isn't a good one. I don't care what age you're at. But the audience, like I said, I was the youngest, so screw you.
Right.
I was the youngest in there. They were eating it up. So, when you look at 45% on Rotten Tomatoes, though, and here again, we talk about this all the time, the schism between what can be in Rotten Tomatoes and what can be on a cinema score. And sometimes they're vastly different, like this movie right here. that, that's a split. 45 is not fresh.
No.
At all. And, it gets a B plus, which is pretty decent. And it means that, too. Here's the other thing. Going into the movie, I was talking to a friend of mine who works for exhibition and MJR theaters. And I love this woman to death. And we were talking about going in style. She saw it, and she really enjoyed it. And I said, how much do you think this movie's going to do? I'm like, if this movie does like 9, I'd be so. She goes, oh no. She goes, but I'm not seeing any advertising. I'm not seeing marketing. But they were not going for, they weren't putting advertisement on The Expanse or the Goldbergs, so to speak. They were they reached out to their audience, and they got that 20% you said, right? They got that audience to come in and go to the movies, And you have to think about this too. Think about this, gross. It is a discounted ticket. I mean, I'm not making focus. It's a senior citizen ticket, which is usually like a child. So they're not paying $10, $12. That's an $8 ticket. So if $8 is getting you up to almost $12 million, they went in mass, so to speak.
So congratulations, people.
It's a cheaper ticket.
People are liking it. That's a really cheap. My ticket's usually like $16.
Yeah. Well,
this is LA. I get that.
My only saving grace is, and not that I would have seen it. It wasn't an IMAX. So I usually, if it's afforded me, I'll try to see it. But I think I might have not seen. I didn't need to see this in IMAX.
You need to see it in 3D XD.
No, I didn't. No. Or 40X. No, I didn't. But that should say something. The only thing is now is that it's going to be copied. You can bet that the studios, after the opening weekend gross, right? Even though it came in at number 4, this.
Well, the fact that it beat almost
beat Smurfs.
Like, that's insane. Like, we should not be having that conversation.
Correct. Right? But what happens? Show me scripts with old people. I want old people scripts. I want old people stories.
Which I actually don't think that's a bad thing. No. But make them good.
Make them good.
Like Grumpy Old Men is good. Gone Fishing is not old men, but I think it's elderly. Older than me, I'll say. So, but I think those kinds of buddy movies, just with older people, right. I think that's fine.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Especially, look, when you have, you can put cast like this together. They're obviously, but I say you just strive for trying to make it a little bit more acceptable. Like get a cross section, because these people in a really good story could be a really good commercial success. And I'm not saying, again, I wasn't looking for Ocean's 11 out of this, but if you gave them a little bit more confidence, a little bit more smarts, a little more meat into that story, right? Then you could have gotten far better reviews. You have this cast, the cast is drawing a lot of people in, I would think, from a marketing standpoint. I'm just saying, try not to be lazy, for lack of a better word. That may not be the right word, but you can strive to do something that's better, that's a comedy that doesn't disrespect the subject matter. That's all. That's all I'm. So, Las Vegas. Did you see the movie Las Vegas? Which I think, wasn't Alan Arkin in that?
I'm not sure. I did not see it, so unfortunately.
That did have Morgan. Well, that had Morgan Freeman in it for sure. Let's see: Michael Douglas, Robert De Niro, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Kline, Mary Steenburgen. So definitely an older cast. And I'll be honest, as I actually thought Las Vegas was a better movie than this. So, not a ton better. But that movie made $63 million all in. $63 million. Its production budget was at 28. So 3 million more. They filmed in Vegas, obviously. They had an opening weekend. Well, catch this. They had an opening weekend of $16 million. Not that we're talking 4 million disparity on an opening weekend, right? And all in, that Las Vegas grossed $63 million.
Yeah, it's people want it.
If you have,
make it good.
Yeah, just
That's
make
all.
it good. Make it good.
You know?
Sure. Put the talent in there. These people deserve respect. They deserve an audience's respect. I think they put in the time, and they put in performances, and they've given us so much from movie history that, you know, to put these people together, you gotta go, oh, how can this miss? You know,
I mean, I was sucked into that. I won't lie. In terms of the promotion, I said they were. This looks good.
Is that what? Well, let me ask you. Is it good? What drew you in? Like, what did you? Yeah. What about it that drew you in?
Number one, the premise that, you know, it's something that we don't see. So I think just strive for that. Just something we've never seen. And so for me, even I've never heard of Going in Style as a movie before this. Unfortunately, the 79 one. And so I looked at it. I was like, oh, this seems original enough.
Yeah.
And you know, I like all these actors. The trailer makes it out to be funny and slapstick. So I'm in.
Yeah. But the cast had something to do with it. Like, if it was somebody else, like...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other older actors. Like, even if Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, who we were naming, like, you could interswap these guys for some of those, and I still would have been interested. But if it was just an unknown to me, then yeah, I'd been like, okay, the premise is cool, but
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, when you're putting this package together and you have these three guys, that to me seems like that's relatively easy. You should be able to cut a good trailer with these three talents in there, and whether the movie's funny or not, you should be able to, like, cut something that makes it look funny. So
they did.
And they cut it and they marketed it to that audience who went. And again, like I said, they were getting at a lower ticket price mostly. So, and that's something that, you know, you need to think about. And if they're making up, what did you say, 20% of the audience?
that was the statistic.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a general statistic of what I saw as moviegoers. Or like that's what this article was trying to portray of why there should be movies such as this, and that we should treat the elderly with a little bit more respect, because they do represent 20% of our box office, which is an otherwise underserved demo.
Yeah, and I think that as a whole, we're getting a little bit more diversity in film because of everything that's been bandied about. Whether it's we have to serve the Latin American audience, which is just huge audience. So, you know, I can't wait to look at the demos for Fate and the Furious, because those demos, when you talk a cross section, you know, the Latin American audience loves those movies, loves them, and they go in droves, just like anybody else. But I always love looking at the demos of that, because you have to figure whatever box office it's going to bring in. And that's what they look to favor. You know, how are we doing domestically, internationally? But I think we're becoming a little more diverse in that. And so I think we will start to maybe see, like, Hollywood doesn't like to leave money on the table, and they will copy. Say, well, Going in Style. Do we have another old movie? Can we reimagine Grumpy Old Men? Who do we get for that? Somebody's
I would love to
thinking
see
something
Gone
like-
Fishing with, you know, and more than just two people. You know, I think you can make a trio for Gone Fishing.
Yeah.
But even just make something new. Just there's plenty of movies to be had.
Sure, absolutely. I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more.
So
Keep going.
And honestly, like, to be honest, like, if there's a reason why I went, it's because, even though it's not, to me, it seemed like an original idea.
Sure.
And that's it. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. No, I agree. I agree with you. Sometimes this is the smallest thing that'll have you go to a movie. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Even Gifted, like, it's just on the surface, it's a custody. We talked about it. It's a custody movie. It's a genius mathematician movie combined together and made something special.
And my one major difference when we talked Gifted, I felt Gifted was genuine.
Yeah.
And pulling out emotion from me, and I got emotional. This movie wasn't so much, but I totally see, and I to an extent I understand its success, but I think that audience can demand and should demand maybe a little bit more. But I think Hollywood we'll start to see a little bit more of those types of movies, and hopefully these people will still be able to act, and get out there and perform. So there you have it.
Absolutely. And I love to see Christopher Lloyd in something.
Me too.
I think as of late, he's more been in that recycling, kind of like even with Piranha, he's recycling Doc Brown, because people just, and I don't think it's his fault, they're just telling him, do this.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, well, fine, that you're paying me to act, so that's how you want me to act, I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think he can go. I'd like to see one more performance from him.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's got to be a director and a storyteller out there that could put him in a role, giving his acting chops a little bit more respect. I mean, you say Doc Brown, and he was Reverend Jim in Taxi. You know, he's that way out guy. He was Michael Richards in Taxi before Michael Richards became the Michael Richards we know and love in Seinfeld, you know? And you're right. I agree. I would like somebody to put him in a movie outside of Going in Style where they let him act and let him be funny without having to channel Doc Brown. He obviously loves Doc Brown.
He does, but I mean, you know, there's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, there's Fester. So, but I would love one more great iconic character for Chris Lloyd.
Me too.
Before the end.
Me too.
And I think he did. I think, you know, I having the privilege to have met him, I think he's more than capable of doing it.
Agreed.
But it's not up to him, unfortunately. It's up to the world. It's up to the world.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And like I said, Star Trek 3, he was Commander Krug. He was Captain Kirk's nemesis in that movie in The Search for Spock.
All right. Any final thoughts before we go out in style? All right. So we're going to go out in style. At DMovies 1701.
Nobody has ever accused me of that, but I'll just go out. At DMovies 1701. Yeah, please support me on Twitter. I'm trying to get up to trying to get into double digits.
There you go. Yeah. Follow us here at the Popcorn Talk. Thank you. As always, we've got a ton of movies, both in our archive. We've done a lot of Michael Caine movies, a lot of Alan Arkin movies, and Morgan Freeman movies. So definitely lots to choose from in the past.
Speaking of, have you seen The In-Laws?
I have not.
Him with Peter Falk?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not seen either.
No, he started opposite Peter Falk. Oh, in either iteration. See the original In-Laws. I have a Criterion Blu-ray of it. Have you over? We'll have popcorn. I'll throw something on the grill. Hysterical. And Peter Falk, talk about like hysterical. It's great movie. So.
Well, there you have it. So definitely check out our archives. We don't have that movie in our archives, but we've got lots of other ones for you to check out. So we're at no shortage. We've passed the 350 mark. Soon 400. I don't know how far away we are from 400. I just never really checked that stuff, and then one day I look, oh my god, we've done over 400.
We
We've
need
done
to
over this.
press release that stuff. Are we really over 350?
I believe so.
We need to press release that out. 350 episodes. That's syndication rights, my friend. Where's my contract? What the hell?
Listen, we just do. We're so in love with what we do that we just do it.
We just do it without knowing what the hell we're doing.
Yeah, you know, that just goes to show most people just do things to feel accomplishment. We just do it for the sheer pure love of it that we don't even track any accomplishments within our own life.
We need
for better or worse.
That'll better us. 350 shows strong, folks. And thank you. You've been there through a lot of it. I've said this before. We're a longer show. You take time to watch us, and then you take time to write. Very, very heartfelt. It means a lot to, speaking on behalf of us, it means a lot to all of us. It means a lot to me. Your conversation continues on. Whether you agree or disagree, your comments have been heartfelt. They've been smart writing, right?
Absolutely.
You commented on our #1 fan, actually. This is really well written. Couldn't appreciate it more. Thank you very much.
There you go. And to those curious, Sarah Stretton, we would love to have her back, but she's a busy actress, and we support her. That's the only reason. But we're still friends with her. That's the only problem with success. People sometimes have to go, but nonetheless, we support them.
And I'm still here, so you're saying I'm not successful.
Hey,
I
success
never thought
is
of it that way.
Success is defined in many different ways. Thank you as always. We've got the Fate of the Furious coming up soon thereafter. Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Wonder Woman,
The Circle, Baby Driver.
Tons and tons of movie.
Hey, and I'm gonna say, Phil, we saw Fate of the Furious last night.
It was good.
Saw that together. We had a good time. But thank you, Phil. It was, I mostly see movies. I've been going alone, and but it was good. It's good getting out with the crew. It was good to see you. Thanks for coming along. It was a good ride.
There you go. See?
So
just so you know, we are friends behind the scenes.
behind the scenes, yeah.
All right. Thank you guys as always. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Since you said you were mine, Lord, what a difference a day makes.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.